my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about Home for Christmas by Holly Chamberlin. I hadn't really heard anything about this book. I had just seen it at the shop, was looking for some Christmas books, liked the cover, and thought I'd give it a try. Before we get into that though, as you know, Vlogmas begins tomorrow, but throughout Vlogmas, every Friday, I'm going to have a book talk video up. So I just want to keep that going because I've really got a lot of fun Christmas books that I want to share with you guys, and I don't want to miss out on getting to talk about them during December. So there, now you know. Anyway, let's talk about Home for Christmas. So Home for Christmas is the story of Nell. So we meet Nell. Nell is, I don't think her age is ever given, but I would place her at probably late 40s. She has two teenage daughters, one's 17, one is like 21 or 22. So that's why I'm thinking she's probably mid to late 40s. We quickly learn that Nell is divorced. A few years back, her husband left her for another younger woman, kind of that old cliche, and she now finds herself alone. Ever since her husband left, she's really thrown herself into her children. Like, she's made her children her whole entire life. And I mean her whole entire life. And for anyone who's watching who's a parent, you know that that's not healthy. You know, you want to be active and involved in your children's lives, but you don't want to make them your entire life. And so, because she's done that, now they're getting older and they don't need her as much, and it's really left her with this large void. They're both still at home at this point, but she's already, instead of living in the moment and enjoying the Christmases that she does have with both of her children still living at home, she's instead fretting about the day that will soon come when maybe one or both of them won't be able to come home for Christmas. And as we know, that's not a good way to live either. So basically, Nell is just, she's a mess. A mess. We start to get a bit of history about Nell when at one point we see that she reads in the newspaper that a fairly large and prolific author is coming to do a reading in her small town. And we learn that Nell and this author, whose name is Eric, were lovers in college. They were dating, they had plans to get married. She was a poet at the time, writing, and she thought maybe she really had a future ahead of her as a poet. He was sort of tinkering around with writing, but it didn't get really serious for him until later. But unfortunately, they didn't end up getting married because Nell's parents intervened and told her that, you know, he's not going to be able to provide for you. You're never going to be able to have a successful family with him because he doesn't make enough money and he'll never make enough money. Which, of course, now we know he's become a hugely successful writer, so he would have been. But whatever, her parents' prejudices were showing. And Nell, for whatever reason, I guess she was a mess back then too, because she listens to them. She breaks up with him because they told her to, and she instead goes and marries the man who eventually left her for a younger woman, and his name was Joel. He was successful, wealthy, and she just did what her parents told her to do. So Eric's coming into town and she's excited, but a little nervous because, you know, she dumped him for no real reason aside from the fact that her parents told her to, and she never explained to him why. Understandably so. I'd be pretty embarrassed to tell someone who I loved that I was breaking up with them because my parents don't think he's going to be able to support a family. So the first few chapters of the book are her, you know, fretting about having to see him, but also excited to see him. Also, during this time, we get to know a bit more about her daughters. Felicity is the youngest. She's 17. At the beginning of the book, they kind of paint her to be this vapid, sort of materialistic teenager, you know. And you're kind of like, okay. But then her character changes so much throughout the book, and by the end of it, she's this, like, family-oriented, perfect child. I found a little weird, but okay. Then you have the older daughter, and there's a lot of drama surrounding this older daughter. And that daughter's name is Molly. You see, Molly has a boyfriend named Mick, and he's a farmer. His family owns a farm. He's sort of being set up to take over the farm when the time comes. And Molly's been dating him for a very long time. Sort of the whole town knows that they're going to be getting married soon. But Molly, all of a sudden, having spent her whole life watching her mother and the way her mother lives, Molly all of a sudden becomes terrified that that could possibly happen to her. She doesn't want to throw everything away for a man, you know, because when Nell was young, she was with a man who she loved. She was a poet. Once she married Joel, her dreams of continuing to write poetry and everything, she just tossed them away like they were nothing. So Molly has watched this and she's like, I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to end up like my mother. So she's letting that fear dictate what she does. So she starts thinking, you know what, I'm going to break up with Mick and I'm going to go into the city and just live there. Live a completely opposite life than my mother did. And she does that. She breaks up with him. He's heartbroken, and then she immediately regrets it. She begins to realize that, you know, Mick isn't like her father. Mick probably wouldn't force her to give up on her own hopes and dreams. And then the rest of Molly's story is her trying to get Mick back. So then we have Nell, who is getting ready to go and meet Eric. Her friend Jill, her friend and neighbor Jill, who's recently a widow, she's trying to get Nell to keep her expectations reasonable. She's trying to say, you know, there's a good chance he won't want to see you. There's also a good chance that even if he is happy to see you, he's not going to fall madly back in love with you. And Nell's kind of like, no, I know, I'm not expecting any of those things, but like she is. She's expecting all of those things. And she describes herself at one point. She's talking about how, you know, she's seen a picture of Eric in the paper and he looks great. And she says that she looks older. She looks, you know, because she is older, but that because she's been focused so hard on caring for her children, she stopped taking care of herself, which also not a good parenting tactic. You need to take care of yourself. I feel like everyone knows this, but like, you need to take care of yourself. What's that saying? One of my favorite sayings that I always try to keep in mind when parenting is, you can't pour from an empty cup. I think that's so true, and it's just so true. So anyway, Nell is out here just doing the exact opposite of that. She is trying to get drip drops of water from a very empty cup. She goes to the book reading. She meets up with Eric, who is absolutely thrilled to see her, and he tells her that he's actually going to be in town for a few weeks. She had known that he was married before from, I guess, stalking him on the internet, but he tells her that he is recently divorced. So that's convenient. So they start spending time with each other. You know, the next day they meet up for coffee, and then the day after that they meet up for dinner. Then as Christmas approaches, Eric tells her that he'd love to meet her children. And she's a little weird about it at first. She's like, well, I'll have to see. Even though these are grown children, you know, 17 and 22. It's pretty grown. And she's been divorced for ages. Their father, the children's father, has remarried. And she's like, well, I don't know what the kids will think of it. Like, the kids are fine. The kids are fine. So she mentions it to the kids, and of course they think it's a great idea. In fact, they're like, hey, invite him for Christmas. And she's like, are you sure? I don't want to ruin your Christmas. And they're like, yeah, we're sure, because her kids are not as weird as Nell is, apparently. So anyway, Christmas comes. It's great. Everything works out. As I mentioned before, Felicity becomes the perfect child. Molly gets Mick back. Nell and Eric have a snuggle on the couch at the end of Christmas Day. Everything's perfect for everyone, and nothing really happened in between. You guys, I worried about this coming into Christmas book talk season. I like books that are a little beefier, a little heftier. I like flaws. I like character development. I like darker storylines. I love Christmas, but I had a feeling coming into this that some of the Christmas books just weren't going to be books that I loved. Now, I didn't dislike this. I know I know it sounds like I might have. I didn't. The writing is good. The writing's good. And this book is going to be loved by many, many people. Probably even many of you guys. It's a nice, sweet, simple Christmas story. So reading it for what it was and knowing that it was going to be that, I enjoyed it. My only problem was there were so many cringy eye roll things that, like, there's even one point before Christmas when Nell decides, she says, okay, I am going to go to, it's like a Christmas concert in town. And like I said, it's this very small town. She knows everybody in town pretty much. So she decides that she's going to go to this Christmas concert. Now, Eric had other plans. Her daughters were busy. So she's like, okay, cool. I'll get dressed up and go myself. Because she's thinking to herself, like, my kids aren't, my kids don't need me as much anymore. I need to start doing things for myself. So she gets dressed up, goes to the venue for the Christmas concert, stands outside of it for a minute, and then goes home because she can't go in. Because she's too afraid to go somewhere alone, even though she knows, she would know many people in there. It's a small town. She knows everybody. I don't know, you guys. And I understand social anxiety, that's a thing. That is a very real thing that can keep people from doing things that they want to do. But she doesn't have social anxiety. That wasn't a thing in this book. It's not like, oh, she's trying to get over her social anxiety, but, oh, she can't do it. No, it wasn't like that. That I would at least have some compassion for. It's like, girl, go to the concert if you want to. So instead she goes home, and then when her kids come home and ask how it was, she lies and said she went. You guys. Anyway, I don't want to be too hard on this book. It was a sweet little Christmas tale, and look how pretty that cover is. And Holly Chamberlin, the story is well written. It's not like it's poorly written. It's just I didn't connect with any of the characters at all. And maybe somebody out there will hear me talk about Nell, the mom that just pours everything into her kids and doesn't take care of herself. Maybe you'll hear me talk about that and you'll say, you know what? I relate to that. In which case, yes, read about Nell. And if you just want a cheesy Christmas story, yes, read this. It's great. But for my personal taste, I just didn't love it. But I don't regret reading it. I had fun. I liked curling up with a glass of hot chocolate or a glass of wine and reading this story. It's not a super long novel. You can get through it in, a couple of nights. And it was fun. But I just didn't like how everyone was a little too perfect. You know what I mean? Nobody had any real flaws. And if they did, the character development didn't seem very realistic to me. And a lot of times the flaws were positive, you know what I mean? Like for Nell, her big flaw is that she loves her family so much, she pours everything into her children. Well, it's not unhealthy, it's kind of like that, oh, her flaw is that she's trying to be the perfect mother. Like, really? I don't know. I have 3 more Christmas book talks coming up. I think they're going to go better than this one. I think they're going to go better than this because I have a good feeling. But I know there's a market for this. I know tons of people love these happily ever after, feel good, romance stories. There's a big market for it. You might love this. And if you hear me describe that and you're like, I do love those things, then definitely pick it up. Otherwise, we will discuss another book next week. And hopefully it's not quite as cheesy. Anyway, you guys, Thank you so much for watching. I always hate when I'm kind of a little rougher on the books, just because, you know, there's a market for it. People love it. It just wasn't my personal cup of tea. I know I've said that before. I just want to reiterate that. I hope you have a great weekend, you guys, and I will see you tomorrow for day 1 of Vlogmas. It's December already tomorrow. How crazy. I'll see you then, guys. Bye.